Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most drastic, fascinating public image shifts of any modern historical figure, Bill Gates. We're talking about a guy who fundamentally altered how we interact with technology, but whose personal story is just as complex, debated, and layered as the software empire he built. How did a feared tech monopolist become the world's most generous philanthropist? And why is his legacy suddenly under fire? You know, Gates's early prodigy status really set the stage for everything. We're talking about a kid who scored a 1590 on his SATs and was obsessively coding before most of the world even knew what a computer was. He actually drops out of Harvard in 1975 to start Microsoft with Paul Allen. But the absolute masterstroke, that happens in 1980. IBM needed an operating system for their new personal computer. Gates hands them PC-DOS for a one-time fee of $50,000. But here is the genius part. He intentionally keeps the ultimate copyright. He knew other companies would inevitably clone the IBM hardware. And guess what? They'd all need his software to run it. Fast forward to the Windows 1.0 launch in 1985 and the Microsoft IPO in 1986, and Gates is catapulted to immense wealth, becoming the youngest self-made billionaire ever at just 31 years old. What is truly fascinating here is the stark contrast in how the world viewed him depending on the decade. Throughout the 1990s, he definitely wasn't trying to save the world. He was aggressively trying to conquer the tech industry. People widely saw him as a brilliant but combative robber baron, a ruthless technocrat demanding absolute market dominance. But then, compare that to the 2010s. His image completely morphs. He becomes this huggable, billionaire techno-philanthropist celebrated on magazine covers globally for giving his vast fortune away. It's almost like looking at two different people. To really grasp that early 90s era, Joel Spolsky, a former Microsoft developer, recalled a review meeting where someone literally kept a tally of how many times Gates dropped the F-bomb. When the count was unusually low, the inside joke was that, well, he must be getting mellow in his old age. This perfectly captures his intense, competitive management style. He was notorious for interrupting presentations, berating employees for any perceived holes in their strategies, and obsessively memorizing his competitors' moves. For him, it was about winning at literally any cost. So it probably doesn't surprise you that this fierce competitiveness eventually collided with the United States government in a massive antitrust showdown in the late 90s. The government basically accused Microsoft of anti-competitive tactics, and during his legal deposition, Gates was notoriously evasive. Highly combative. He was arguing with the examiner over the contextual meaning of basic everyday words like compete and we. When they played the tapes back in court, even the presiding judge couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer obfuscation. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Microsoft had indeed committed monopolization, tying, and blocked competition. All right, let's fast forward a bit to understand his Act 2, the huge pivot to global philanthropy. We really need to anchor ourselves in some jaw-dropping statistics first. As of February 2026, his estimated net worth sits at an absolutely staggering $107.7 billion. Just to put his wealth building into perspective, back in 1999, he actually became the world's first centibillionaire when his net worth briefly crossed the 100 billion mark. In fact, he held the title of the world's richest person for 18 out of 24 years between 1995 and 2017. Now contrast that massive personal wealth with this number, $100 billion. That is the total amount he has made in charitable donations, as he noted in a 2025 interview. Think about that. 60 billion of that went directly to the Gates Foundation. Heavily influenced by the Rockefeller family's philanthropy, he decided to channel his immense resources to tackle these massive systemic global problems that governments and other giant organizations were frankly just ignoring. And incredibly, despite having over $100 billion to his name, he stated in that same 2025 interview that his kids will inherit less than 1% of his wealth. Only about $30 million is being kept in the family. He and Warren Buffett actually founded the Giving Pledge, making a concrete commitment to give virtually all of their wealth to charity, with the ultimate goal of moving themselves completely off the list of the world's richest people. So you might be wondering, where exactly is all that money going? Well, he took that exact same laser focus he used to dominate the tech market and pivoted it straight toward global health. It became a massive mission to save lives. His foundation targets huge systemic issues. We're talking eradicating polio globally, fighting transmissible diseases like malaria and tuberculosis, and heavily funding the COVID-19 Therapeutics Accelerator to fast-track treatments during the pandemic. He even spearheaded the Reinvent the Toilet challenge to figure out sustainable sanitation for developing nations. And he is so dedicated to these causes that he'll do almost anything to grab the public's attention. In 2014, he famously drank water that had been reclaimed from human feces just moments before, using a sewage treatment machine called the Omniprocessor. He even took it a step further, going on late-night TV to challenge Jimmy Fallon to a taste test between the reclaimed poop water and regular bottled water. It was all a super enthusiastic stunt to prove the machine actually works and to raise global sanitation awareness. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is. But beyond traditional charity, the sheer breadth of his financial investments is honestly staggering. Through his holding company, Cascade Investment, he is actually the largest private owner of farmland in the entire United States, holding 242,000 acres across 19 states. He's also the chairman and co-founder of TerraPower, which is developing next-generation nuclear power plants, and he founded Breakthrough Energy to fund high-risk green tech startups. He aggressively uses his capital to push technological solutions for planetary problems. Act 3. The Complicated Reality. Unpacking the controversies of a modern titan. Okay, so up to this point, we've looked at the ruthless tech titan and the globally celebrated philanthropist. But that pristine, saintly savior image really began to fracture in 2021 when Bill and Melinda Gates announced their divorce after more than 27 years of marriage. Amid this very high-profile split, reports started surfacing regarding his past inappropriate workplace relationships. The press revealed that an external law firm had actually been probing his alleged conduct with a Microsoft employee and that he stepped down from the Microsoft board before that investigation even concluded. Compounding that massive PR crisis was the intense public scrutiny over his past associations with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Gates had multiple meetings with Epstein starting around 2011. Now, Gates later openly admitted it was a huge mistake to spend time with him to give him the credibility of being there. He maintained that he only met Epstein in hopes of securing philanthropic funding and that nothing ever came of the idea. But as you can imagine, the association deeply damaged his public standing. Then, the controversy deepened even further in January 2026 when newly unsealed Epstein files revealed uncorroborated draft emails authored by Epstein himself. According to the documents, these emails alleged extramarital affairs and detailed an apparent attempt by Epstein to actually blackmail Gates after a failed philanthropic deal. Gates' spokesperson vehemently denied the allegations, officially describing the emails as an absolutely absurd entrapment and defamation efforts stemming from Epstein's own frustration. But it wasn't just his personal life sparking fierce debate. His policy stances came under fire too. In October 2025, Gates released a memo stating that climate change does not pose an existential threat to civilization. He argued that poverty and healthcare are much more pressing funding priorities. Well, this triggered a massive backlash from the scientific community. Climate scientist Katherine Hayhoe pointed out in response, the reason we care about climate change is that it's the hole in every bucket. Critics forcefully argue that Gates fundamentally misunderstood how climate negatively impacts the very developing nations he's trying so hard to help. And this polarization completely extended to his approach to global health. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he actively opposed lifting patents for vaccines, something known as the TRIPS waiver. His argument was that safety protocols and manufacturing transfers were the real bottleneck, not intellectual property. But many heavily criticized this stance as protecting corporate monopolies at the expense of public health. When you combine this heavy reliance on technological solutionism with his immense wealth, he rapidly transformed from a universally beloved philanthropist into a highly polarizing figure. He even became the central target of entirely unfounded, completely baffling global internet conspiracies regarding microchips. So, looking at this sprawling, incredibly complex journey, from a feared, brilliant software monopolist to an unprecedented global giver tackling polio and sanitation, to a highly scrutinized human being at the dead center of major cultural and scientific debates, what is your key takeaway about his legacy? Innovator, philanthropist, or controversial titan? How do you think history will ultimately remember Bill Gates?